You know, Peter, when it comes to the CDI, automatically switching from GPS to V-lock, I got so fed up years ago with the automatics that I went to a manual operation all of the time.
Yeah, it is a whizzy feature, but I always ask myself, what value does this feature bring to my flying? In this case, not so much, and it creates some problems.
Depending on the autopilot that you use, you may want to turn this feature off, but if you're going to use it, then you need to understand it. To start it off, let's show you the setup pages for CDI automatic switching. If we take the Garmin 500, here's a 530, you go to the aux chapter, page 3, CDI and alarms, and you find here ILS CDI capture. There's only two settings, manual and auto. We find that the typical factory default is auto. We look at the Garmin 400 series, the Garmin 430 here, and again, it's found in the same place. The aux chapter, page 3, under CDI alarms. You can see here it says ILS CDI selection, and again, the factory default tends to be auto. So now that you've got where to find the setup pages, let's just give you an example of what we're talking about here. Here's the ILS runway 7 at Orlando Executive. I'm just going to zoom in on the plan view. And you can see the airplane here is getting ready to join the approach course. So now as I start the automation, I want you to look at the CDI. So note, the CDI automatically switches from GPS to V-lock. You didn't see my hand come in and do anything, did you? So now that you understand the basics, let's dive into the details. So first of all, we have to talk about what we call the automatic switch criteria. Point one being, in order for this to work, the final approach fix has to be the active waypoint. I'm going to repeat this. The final approach fix must be the active waypoint. Point number two, the localizer frequency must be tuned and the active nav frequency. And point number three, you have to find your airplane inside what we call the auto switching box. And that box is made up of 1.2 nautical miles left or right of the approach course. And you have to be within 2 to 15 nautical miles from the final approach fix. So here is the airplane approaching the box. The CDI is set to GPS. When you enter the box, the CDI will switch automatically from GPS to V-lock. Now that you've seen it normally, sometimes it does not switch. So how can you tell if it's switched or not? If you take a look at your HSI when you're flying, you notice you don't have a glide slope. Or how about if you fly with a glass cockpit and you look at your primary flight display? Up at the attitude indicator, there's no glide slope. Why? Because your CDI is still set to GPS. So that leads people to ask us the great question, hey guys, why didn't it switch? You see this posted on the forums all the time. The first reason is the final approach fix is not the active waypoint. And that is typically because there are intermediate fixes. For instance, you'll have step downs on an ILS approach leading you to the precision portion. So as the airplane joins the approach course, if the intermediate fix is the active waypoint, your CDI is still going to be set to GPS. Once the airplane passes over the intermediate fix and the final approach fix becomes the active waypoint, the CDI will automatically switch from GPS to V-lock. If you take a look at this example here, you can see the airplane is getting ready to join the approach course on the ILS runway 28 right at San Diego, Montgomery. You can see at the top of the screen there we have Dioro. So Nesty is our intermediate fix, and Dioro is the final approach fix. So I'll tell you what, let's slow this thing down so you really have the time to get it. Nesty is the intermediate fix, Dioro the final approach fix. So now, when the airplane passes over Nesty, and Dioro becomes my active waypoint, there it is. The final approach fix is the active waypoint. Note that the CDI automatically switches from GPS to V-lock.
Yeah, I think the main takeaway point here is that you just have to be patient, right? If you intercept the localizer and you still have a step down fix in front of you, it's not going to auto switch until you pass over that fix. As soon as the final approach fix becomes active, it will auto switch and everything works great.
The second reason is that the localizer is not the active frequency. So you can see here, we're on the ILS runway 7 at Orlando Executive, and I'm just going to take the airplane and just whip it on around onto the final approach course. And you can see here, as I get established, the Garmin gives me a message. So when I check the message says, select the appropriate frequency for the approach. Take a look at the VLOC frequencies and note that the localizer frequency 109.9 was in the standby position. So now that I flip-flop it up, I have to manually go to the CDI and change it from GPS to VLOC.
You know, we want to try to avoid this in the first place, and the way we handle that here at Like the Pros is we have a trigger or a gate in our instrument procedures where we always tune and identify the localizer. That way we make sure it gets done before we even try to intercept it.
The third reason is that the intercept onto the approach course occurs within 2 nautical miles of the final approach fix, also known as a slam dunk. Does that happen to anybody? It has certainly happened to me. So here's the airplane again at Orlando, ILS runway 7, and note as I turn onto the final approach course, look at my distance. It only says 1.2 nautical miles. As I get established, the Garmin gives me a message, and that message says, you need to select VLOC on the CDI for the approach. So I now, in the middle of being very busy getting myself established on the localizer, I have to find the CDI button, change it from GPS to VLOC.
I think the takeaway here is you got to remember, if you get slam dunked, you're going to have to manually switch the CDI. Better yet, try to get vectored outside 2 nautical miles so that you can intercept the localizer inside the auto switching box.
So don't get us wrong, we do like the automatic switching, but we never fully trust the automation. So here is the procedure we use to make sure it worked correctly. Step 1 is fly using GPS to the final approach course. Step 2, let the CDI automatically switch from GPS to VLOC. Step 3 is the final approach fix active checklist, and that means when the final approach fix becomes the active waypoint, we run the CRAP mnemonic. Let's go to video and show it to you. For C, it's CDI, source and course. I make sure that the source is on VLOC, it is, and that the course is set to 070. For the R, I'm checking the RAIM and that the Garmin has gone into LNAV mode, which it has. For A, which is Autopilot mode enunciators, I make sure that approach mode is armed for the glide slope coupling. And for P, I confirm my altitude pre-select. If it's an ILS, once I get set up on the glide slope, or an established, I'll actually set my missed approach altitude. If it's a non-precision approach, I'll simply dial up the next step down or the MDA. So we're going to raise the warning flag here, and that warning is some autopilots revert to roll mode when the CDI switches. Some autopilots that we've seen that in is the KAP 140 and the KFC 225. So if we take a look here at the autopilot mode enunciators, it says heading, approach, arm. That means you are flying a heading and they probably cleared you for the approach, so you reached over and pushed the approach button. So you get the mode enunciators, heading, approach armed, altitude, that's for altitude hold, 3,000 feet. So now let's go to the automation, watch the autopilot mode enunciators as the airplane gets established on the final approach course. Approach armed changes to approach. So we have approach, altitude, 3,000 feet. Now, we're established on the final approach course. We're approaching Nesty, the intermediate fix. We're going to slow this down. Dioro is the final approach fix. And as the airplane comes up on Nesty, we've now learned that when the Garmin has the final approach fix as the active waypoint, the CDI will automatically switch from GPS over to VLOC. Now look what happened at the autopilot. Approach is flashing. That APR flashing means the autopilot has gone into roll mode.
Yeah, what's happened here, Mossy, is there's been a momentary interruption of the navigation signal as the Garmin is switched from GPS to VLOC. And when the autopilot sees that, it kicks itself out of approach mode. But the scary thing is, it does it silently. There's no beeps, no oral enunciations. It just flashes that indicator. And if this autopilot's installed on the other side of the panel, you're not going to see it.